Hello, all you cool cats out there, and welcome to Undeclared Bajor. This is Undeclared Bajor, the best Star Trek DS9 discussion podcast ever. My name is Fletcher, about to say hello is Data.
Yo!
Today we're here to discuss Star Trek DS9 Season 6, Episode 20, His Way. Alternate title, Vic in a Bottle.
I don't know. I mean, I get the reference, but yeah, I feel like you're stretching it.
We will be discussing spoilers up through this episode, but not after this episode, so it's safe to watch along with us if this is your first experience with Star Trek DS9. But we don't feel bad about spoiling other stuff, so just, watch out. Especially stuff that's like more than a year old. We'll spoil that all over the place.
Yeah, we do that.
Although we are so far ahead in recording that it's kind of like we could try to spoil Penguin, but everybody who's listening has already finished watching Penguin by now, so...
Unless they haven't started yet.
Yeah, but what are you doing? Go watch Penguin.
It's pretty good. Sophia especially. She's a great villain.
I predict she's going to die.
See, that's actually my worry, is that, they're they're going to waste this great character on, propping up the Penguin origin story when she could be way more useful in the long run.
So, do you think they'll go with her joining forces with Penguin, or they'll just be forever like the two rival crime bosses in Gotham?
I don't know. At this point, it seems like it would be bizarre to me if she could trust Tim enough ever to join forces with him, because I mean, he killed her brother, so I don't see that happening. Yeah. I'm not sure what I think realistically could happen, but I don't see that happening.
It's a pretty hard thing to overlook.
Yeah.
But His Way originally aired April 22nd, 1998. It was written by ISB and HB, Ira Steven Behr and Hans Beimler, and directed by Alan Craker. And Sarah Clofton, again, is not in this episode.
Nope. He's just gone.
Yeah. Just put him in... You can find something for him to do in VIX. Come on.
You turn around and Jake's, playing the piano after Odo leaves, and you're like, wait, what? Vic's helping me with my writing. Somehow.
Right. So I've got a writing inspiration subroutine.
Or else, Odo's like, what are you doing here, Jake? And Jake's like... And Vic's like, what, did you think you're the only one I help with the relationship problems?
So, he's helping me overcome my fixation on older women with large busts. But, so it's Vegas, the 1960s, a swanky nightclub. A vaguely Sinatra-esque lounge singer croons in front of a big glittery sign that says Vic Fontaine.
What could his name possibly be?
I wonder who this guy is.
Yeah.
Over at the bar, the crew of D-Space9 watch and enjoy. Except for Worf, who prefers Klingon opera.
It's just, you can enjoy more than one kind of music, Worf.
But he's allowed to prefer it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but I mean, who goes to a concert and it's like, this isn't the one kind of music I prefer above all others, so I dislike it.
Pretty typical Worf, I'd say.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously it's a holosuite program. Captain Sisko isn't there, though. The bouncer of this historically accurate 60s nightclub wouldn't let him in.
We'll get there someday. Don't worry.
When the set is over, Dr. Bashir introduces the others to Vic. I know, pretty sweet pipes for a light bulb, jokes Vic. Everybody's confused until Vic clarifies that he knows he's a hologram. It wouldn't do for a big shot Vegas singer not to know the score.
But also they don't know what light bulbs are.
Oh, yeah. Felix designed him that way, explained Bashir. So, Felix? Are we just going to drop that name and then not ever come back to it?
Did we not hear his name in the one of the Bashir spy things before? I don't remember at this point.
Maybe.
Hold on. I'm gonna.
Is he Bashir's guy who
Felix
makes
article.
the spy programs too?
Yes, he also does that.
Okay.
Let me see. Felix's creations include Julian Bashir's secret agent and Vic Fontaine. But does he get mentioned in a simple investigation? The character was only mentioned in, appears in the novel The Long Mirage, in which his full name is given as Felix Knightley. And he's described as a person of color.
Interesting. He's described as a person of color in the book?
Apparently, yes.
Hmm.
Okay, so here we go. In Quark's... Okay, so in the episode of Simple Investigation, when it's like Bashir and Odo and O'Brien and Dax are all sitting around and Bashir's explaining like all of their roles in this new Julian Bashir secret agent thing, he mentions that like the new program from Felix arrived.
Ah, but that's still all we know about Felix.
Yes.
Okay. But I feel there's some other questions that are just kind of glossed over, like, is Vic a conscious being? Like, what's
we
going
don't care
on
about
here?
that.
Nobody seems to care.
They're going to address that in Voyager. We don't care. And the last time something like this happened, like I feel like O'Brien should be the most concerned.
Yeah,
or
you should be like, hey, we had this back on the Enterprise. We had this like whole Moriarty situation.
We had to like shove him in a box.
I think we need to be on alert not to get ship in a bottled.
Yeah. But the origins of Vic Fontaine are kind of fun here, and I will go into. So Ira Stephen Bear wanted to do a character like this since like early on. He said a Rat Pack kind of guy who would dispense advice on love and life to the crew. He tried to get the character introduced in the 4th season, where he would have been played by Frank Sinatra Jr. And so Robert Hewitt Wolf and Bear wrote a sample scene and had the casting director take it to Sinatra. But Frank Sinatra Jr. was like, I want to play an alien. I don't want to play a human. And I certainly don't want to play a character like based partially on my dad. So he's like, I'm going to go on Star Trek to do what I could do anywhere. And so that didn't work out. So season 5 comes along. Bear and now Renee Chevalier is in on it. And they're like, okay, we're going to introduce the character in the episode of Simple Investigation, which, hey, I was just referencing. So they wrote a scene. The character was given the name Vic Fontaine, and they wanted Steve Lawrence to play the role. And so then I'm like, okay, well, who's Steve Lawrence? I'm not familiar with that person. So had to bring that up. And it's, he was, it says, known for his performance as Maury Sline, the manager and friend of the main characters in the 1980 film The Blues Brothers. So if you remember the Blues Brothers manager, you know who we're talking about.
Which I do not, but...
Anyway, so that's who they wanted at that point. But then that guy proved unavailable, and also the script for that episode ran long, so there's like, okay, we can't get the guy, we need to cut something, we'll cut that part out. But they know now, they're like, we have this character, he's all ready to go, we're going to get him in some episode, we need to find somebody to play him. So they go to Robert Goulet, Tom Jones, Jerry Vale, and they're all like, nope, not interested. So, like a Robert Goulet Vic Fontaine could have been interesting, but anyway, so...
He was too busy doing The Simpsons.
Yeah, probably, And so one day, Ira Stephen Bear and his close friend, Frederick Rappaport, who did the teleplay for Move Along Home, by the way.
Oh, good.
They are out at like a memorabilia sale in Beverly Hills, and they see James Darren. And neither of them knows him, but Rappaport is just like, hey, and like goes up and starts chatting with him like they're old friends. And Bear is, the way he describes it, it just sounds like he's just like creepily watching these two interact. And he's like, I see this guy handling Fred so well, and he's so smooth and friendly and so likable and looks so good. So he decides, I'm going to offer Darren the role. So the next day, they have the casting director send the script of this episode to James Darren. And Darren says, okay, I'll come in and talk to you about it. He emphasized, I'm not going to audition. I'm not going to do a reading. I'm just going to come in. We'll have a conversation, talk about this role. He comes in and they start having a discussion, and he starts telling his story about how he owns a pair of Dean Martin shoes. And as Bear explains, suddenly he starts talking about him and Frank and Dean and gambling and making all this money. And we realize he's doing the part. It caught us totally by surprise. We're sitting there with the script pages, and we don't even realize it. He's gone from Jimmy to Vic without missing a beat. And so that is when they all knew that this was the guy for the role.
Nice. But that first time, they didn't even know who he was? Or Ira didn't, anyway?
I think they knew who he was. They didn't know him. But they just, Frank Rappaport, or Frederick Rappaport, he calls him Frank later, just goes up and starts having... Oh, he calls him Fred, sorry. Anyway, he just goes up and starts a conversation with this... not unfamous guy. And he's just like, yeah, it's, maybe in LA that's easier to do. But
sure,
I like the article on James Darren in here says that he's probably best known for his regular roles in the television series The Time Tunnel and also T.J. Hooker.
Excellent. So he's got connections. He knows Shatner. So, I don't know. I just assumed that, there was no plausible way they could get Kira and Odo together at this point, so they just kind of Hail Married it with this crazy lounge singer story.
I mean, yeah, they're like, how are we going to do this? Well, I don't know.
Maybe a sentient hologram Frank Sinatra gets them together? All right,
let's go for it.
Let's run with it. Can I write the script? No, Fred.
No, you're fine. It's all good.
You knocked it so far out of the park with Move Along Home that you could not possibly top yourself.
Yeah, no, just quit while you're ahead.
So anyway, Vic begins demonstrating his student of the human heart subroutines, and I guess also Klingon, Trill, Bajoran, and Changeling hearts.
Yeah.
Immediately picking up on the vibes that Worf and Dax are married, and that Miles misses Keiko, but he wants to look at some pretty ladies. And as for Kira and Odo, I'm sensing that one of you ditched the other to join a brutal, oppressive empire, and then an alternate timeline version of you killed an entire planet. Actually, let's skip you two.
Yep.
Everybody's impressed, although Vic admonishes them to dress up nicer next time.
Yeah, this is a fancy place, y'all. Come on.
Yeah, this is a swanky 60s nightclub. Outside the holosuite, Bashir invites everyone back tomorrow night for more Vegas fun. Kira can't make it, though. She's going to Bajor for some mysterious reason. Say hi to Shakar for me, says Dax. Oh, shoot, she says. She didn't want me telling anyone that.
Such a gossip.
And she's probably not too happy about her saying that she didn't want anybody knowing about it either, but...
yeah.
Classic Dax.
It really is classic Dax. I mean, there's no other way around it.
So Bashir and O'Brien go grab a couple of beers from the bar at Quark's, and Bashir talks about how Vic has done wonders for his love life. He's dating Ensign Walker because of Vic. So
I'm sure that will go really well.
Right.
Ensign Walker will become the new main character as she gets into this relationship with him.
Oh yeah, this is a totally serious thing. Odo lurks awkwardly in the background and listens. Later in the security office, Odo and Quark talk about Kira. In Quark's opinion, Odo had over a year to take his shot, and he never did. So Kira is moving on, or moving back, to Shakar.
I love the concept of this scene where Odo can't talk to anybody except Quark about this, because Quark has figured it out himself at some point. And so, as much as he hates Quark, this is the only person he has. So, and Quark is just like, I don't want to be talking about this. I came here for something completely different, and you started this conversation. Can we please not?
Yeah, I really need to see how this conversation started. Because he says he just came here to talk about a missing shipment of groat clusters.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, look, we got to find these groat clusters. He's like, I just don't know what's going on with Kira. It's like, oh, I guess we're going to do this. Okay. After that, can we talk about the groat clusters, though? But yeah, Quark states in no uncertain terms that Odo's just too cold and emotionless, and he needs to move on. Now, about those groat clusters. But Odo's like, wait, can you get me some time in Dr. Bashir's new holosuite program? And Quark's like, I'm not getting those groat clusters back, am I?
Nope. Not gonna happen. Well, maybe that was the deal. We never see the deal that they cut for this favor. Maybe Quark's like, okay, if I give you some time in the holosuite, will you find my growth clusters?
Right. I feel like I shouldn't be having to pay you to do this, but
I feel like probably on Ferenginar, you do have to pay the cops to do their job. So it's probably more comfortable for Quark, honestly.
True. Good point. He even like frames the whole romance in like business terms. Like you could have done a merger and all that stuff. So later, Bashir walks into Quark's bar and says he's having trouble sleeping. So Quark slams a giant fishbowl on the bar and begins preparing something called a warp core breach.
Yes.
Guaranteed to relax you for the next 3 days.
A warp core breach, this was like a subtle ad because the warp core breach was a drink that had been created for Star Trek The Experience. And so they had to slip it in here. So that makes it authentic.
Does it come in a giant bowl like that?
Well, let's see if I can find some online warp core breach drink.
Does it relax you for 3 days? What's in this warp core breach?
Yes, it appears that it does come in a giant fishbowl.
Oh wow!
And I'm trying to like I found several pictures of people drinking it. This one calls it a Borg sphere. Some of these are different colors, but I only found one recipe, and I don't know if this is in any way the official recipe or if this is just someone's homemade recipe. But
sure.
It says 4.5 ounces of Bacardi Superior, 1.5 ounces of Bacardi Select, 1.5 ounces Bacardi Spice, 1.5 ounces Ducupier Luscious Raspberry Rush, 0.75 ounces Bacardi 151, 30-ounce mix of equal parts cranberry juice, pineapple juice, and orange juice, all poured into a large bowl. And mixed with food-grade dry ice.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's dry ice in there too. Yeah, before we mixed in all that juice, I was like, this is like...
yeah, where this is going to be... If this are the portions, you're going to have like 20 different things that you're putting in here.
This is like 10 shots of alcohol. What are we doing? But yeah, Bashir looks at that. He's like, no, thank you.
He doesn't want to be relaxed for 10 days or whatever.
Right? It's like 3 days? What the heck?
I got that stress. Jeez.
Does it have like oxy in it? What is this?
May as well.
But yeah, he's like, can I just have the Vic Fontaine holosuite program? And then Quark's like, no, all the holosuites are busy. And Bashir's like, at this time of night? What time is it? The bar and promenade seem to be bustling with activity. But
in this part of the country, localized entirely in your holosuite.
Right.
Yes.
Can I see?
No.
Bashir says, oh, well, I guess I'll go wake up Miles to play some tango. I bet he'll appreciate that.
Yeah, yep.
And then Warren's just sitting there and he mumbles, I want to play some tango.
No, Morn just got done with, working out with Worf, his favorite sparring buddy. So he's tired.
Oh yeah, he needs to relax. Okay, give him a warp core breach.
Yeah, that's it.
Up in Vic's club, Vic tells the story of how one time he and Frank and Dean, which I assume is Frank Johnson and Dean Schmidt, great guys, you don't know them, but went on a gambling spree at the Sands. Sammy wasn't there, though. The you-know-whos weren't allowed in the casino back then.
Oh. The funny thing is, like, apparently James Darren is pretty good friends with the Sinatra family. It says that he was good friends with Frank Sinatra Jr., I think, but anyway, he knew the whole Rat Pack, was friends with them, was even chosen to be the godfather of Angela Jennifer Lambert, who was the daughter of Frank Sinatra's daughter, Nancy. So he's the godfather of Frank Sinatra's granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
Also, James Darren apparently died on the 2nd of September of this year, so...
Oh.
R.I.P.
Yep.
James.
Yeah, but you can go on the Wikipedia for the Sands and read all about their wonderful who they let into the casino policies.
Yep.
Back in the 60s.
I completely believe this.
Which Sammy Davis Jr. and the Rat Pack were pretty instrumental in getting, I think, changed.
Yeah, I mean, if Frank and Dean won't come into your casino, then other people won't show up either. So, Solidarity.
But apparently, like, it was like, they would have like Nat King Cole over to perform, and like none of his friends or family could come in to watch him, and
wow,
it it was not a fun... Las Vegas in the 50s and 60s was a kind of a not great place for some people.
Well, a lot of places were, to be fair.
Yeah. And the whole place was also run by the mob, so
yeah,
watch out for that.
If you're in Las Vegas in the 50s and 60s, look out for the mob.
Yeah, I just want to know the story of like what hologram mobsters like Vic Fontaine is entangled with.
Oh, apparently this episode aired a month before Frank Sinatra's death. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
He was like, finally, I can die, having seen my songs used like this.
They mentioned me on Star Trek. It's all good.
Oh yeah. Odo's listening to the story. He's like, okay, yeah, that's great. But mind if I change the subject? What was it you were about to say about me and Kira the other night? And Vic says, well, it's obvious. Odo has feelings for Kira, but she only sees him as a friend. But that can be remedied. But first, you got to ditch the whole Nanook of the North routine. So, I don't know if that's a questionable reference or not.
It's so like Nanook of the North is a 1922 film.
Yeah, I looked up the Wikipedia of it, and it was basically a documentary about a northern native guy. But large portions of it are said to have been staged or something. So
it was the first nonfiction work of its scale, this says.
Huh.
Making it groundbreaking cinema. Holds an approval rating of 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, so I guess that's got to be worth something, right? I don't know who's going on Rotten Tomatoes reviewing documentaries from 1922, but...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, if you're talking about this movie enough to go and talk about it on Rotten Tomatoes, you probably liked it before going in.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
It's like, you know what? I really need to go on Rotten Tomatoes and leave my thoughts on Nanook of the North, because that is a great movie. But Vic advises Odo to get a new set of clothes, so Odo gets all weird looking for a shot and shapeshifts into a tuxedo. It was like, oh, this is going to be a special effects shot right here. Vic invites Odo to the stage. Odo says he doesn't sing, but Vic just wants him to play the piano.
I love Vic is very smooth, comebacks instantly. He's like, good, I don't need the competition.
Right. Odo doesn't play the piano either, but luckily the piano plays itself. Odo just has to get into the vibe or whatever. So the piano starts playing and Vic starts singing Come Fly With Me, and he sings the entire song.
That's because this is, according to Hans Beimler, this is the first musical on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, is that what this is?
He says, musicals are very difficult to make work, and I know that because Ira and I did Fame together, the television series. It was a learning experience in terms of how difficult it is to tell a good story in a musical. And so he's like, that's what this is. This is the Deep Space Nine musical.
I mean, does this count as a musical? I don't know.
But it's also funny because like they're Jay Chataway is the music guy. And for the show, and he's like, we were on the way to the recording studio and still picking out what tunes we were going to do because so many of them were cleared at the last minute. So I couldn't do like full arrangements in advance. I just wrote some generic intros and endings. I didn't know what the rhythm was going to be or the key. But when the tune finally did get cleared, I'm like, okay, we'll put that in. We'll use intro number 2 on that one.
Huh. Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't really listen for the intros to the song, or the outro or whatever. So I'll have to like try to pay attention to that.
And Odo had some fancy piano work going on in that scene. Yeah. So. But yeah, over the course of that song, Odo gradually gets into the groove of things and starts to enjoy himself. Later, they celebrate at Vic's apartment or whatever. Vic pours Odo a drink. Odo says he doesn't drink, and Vic assures him it's not real booze, but I still feel like further clarification is needed. Like, Odo literally can't physiologically drink.
I mean, there should be no problem with Odo, like, taking something in and holding on to it until later.
Right.
But he's also established that he can hold a cup and refill it with himself and then drink it, like so he can blend in. So why doesn't he just do that thing again?
Yeah, good point. Again, I think we've questioned how food works on the holosuites.
Yep.
This does nothing to satisfy
to alleviate that, yeah.
Later, they eat like they are going to get served like a whole like 5-course dinner or something. But
I mean, Vic can still enjoy eating.
But yeah, Odo admits he had fun playing, but he's glad none of his friends saw him. Vic chides him for turning back into a statue all of a sudden. He tells him to sit down and take a few breaths, and all the things he wants will come to him. So they just sit down together, just taking breaths.
Yeah, I mean, that's some great advice. I'm going to follow that. Do nothing but breathe.
Right.
And sit.
Right. I mean, I have heard if you sit long enough by the river, you will see the bodies of your enemies wash by, but...
Where'd you hear that?
I don't know.
You're like, it's just a thing that people are always saying to me. I don't know.
A smooth-talking lounge singer told me that. I thought it was a weird thing for him to say.
that is an odd thing for a lounge singer to... Yeah.
But while they're just sitting, like, taking these breaths together, there's a knock at the door. It's two hot ladies. One of them, Melissa, loved Odo's playing and wants to see his hands. Odo says Vic taught him everything he knows, and Melissa says maybe she can help him get his diploma. I just need to see a transcript of all your credit hours with Vic. Get this checked out. Anyway, Vic says we better get... He got them all a table at the dunes. So there's a sands and a dunes? Like, come on.
I mean, it is the middle of the desert, to be fair.
True.
So
be a little bit more creative, Vegas casino people. The girls are excited. They're going to get to see Shecky, which you can Wikipedia who that is if you want.
Yeah, I like there's a note in here that it's like, that's probably Shecky Green, a comedian who headlined in Vegas for 30 years. Also, Victor Borge?
Borga?
Borg? Yeah. The other name Odo doesn't know was a Danish comedian, musician, author, and actor who often performed in Vegas under the moniker The Great Dane.
Yep, he plays piano and he's funny, like Odo. But Odo, I just love how much Odo doesn't understand any of the cultural stuff that's going on in this episode. He just wants to, like, know how to get into someone's pants.
Yeah, he doesn't need the cultural stuff, but, I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
Odo's a little conflicted about going out with Melissa when he's trying to get with Kira. But Vic tells him, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And Odo says, I don't know how. And then he says, practice, practice, practice. Get it? And Odo's like, no. Which was definitely my favorite line of the episode.
It is a great moment where, this is an idiom that we still have today or whatever. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Everyone knows the answer to the question. And and he's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And Odo's like, I don't know. Like, to him, this conversation has just taken a real weird turn into Vic asking him for directions
right.
to a place that he's never heard of. And he's like, I don't know. And Vic's like, you practice. It doesn't explain like what exactly the idiom means. And Odo's just like, I am lost. All right.
I am a goob being who grew up on the planet Bajor.
How do you get to Bajorian Hall?
Right, exactly. Certainly Vic must have some, like, cultural translation subroutines or something, but I guess not. I guess Felix just really wanted that Vegas 60s authenticity.
Yep.
But so Odo goes off and practices, quote, with Melissa, whatever that means.
Hey, what happens in the holosuite stays in the holosuite.
He's like, do we get to Carnegie Hall now? Later, he goes to Sisko's office to present a report on a smuggling ring. And while Sisko reads the report, Odo starts singing absent-mindedly, "You Can't Take That Away From Me." Sisko gets into it and starts singing too, but he's a much better singer, and also he appears to be the only one who actually knows the lyrics.
I mean, Sisko apparently just knows some old music, and I'm with it.
Yeah. So yeah, they mumble sing together, and then that scene is done.
Honestly, I think breaking the smuggling ring, that would have been an interesting episode. When are we going to see that?
No. We got to learn about Vic Fontaine. Dax walks through a corridor and passes a crewman who incorrectly addresses her as Lieutenant. So, pay attention, dude.
I mean, if she's a lieutenant commander, does either one work? I don't know how that works.
I don't think so. Then she joins Bashir in the turbo lift, and they immediately start gossiping about Kira and Shakar. Apparently, Kira has extended her trip by 2 days. Poor Odo, says Dax. And Bashir, he's like, what?
What does Odo have to do with this? Nothing. That's the problem. Like, Dax, really? Like, you can't even claim that this was an accidental slip this time. You were just like, I gotta, like, Bashir won't get it if I'm too subtle, so I'll just have to, like, just throw it right in his face.
Were they not all there that time that alternate Odo erased that entire planet from the timeline?
I don't think anyone but Odo knew that Odo was the one behind it. The others thought that, like, alternate Dax had done it. But, like, Odo left Kira a message being like, I did this for you.
So Odo plays some more piano music with Vic, but Vic catches him being distracted. Vic asks what's wrong, and Odo says Vic still hasn't told him what to do about Shakar. I mean, do I have to kill his entire planet, or can I, like, get him alone? And then Vic says, no, just don't worry about him. He's probably not as handsome in a tuxedo as you, so... And Odo's like, well, you know, he's pretty handsome, like... And he's the leader of an entire planet. But Vic has a trick up his sleeve. For the next song, he brings out a new singer, Miss Lola Cristal. Lola, who bears a striking resemblance to Kira, comes out and sings a sexy rendition of Fever, and does some sexy sing-flirting with Odo.
So, there's a note in here that Nana Visitor chose the song Fever herself for this. And it says, because of her mother's friendship with Doris Duke, a socialite and patron of the arts, and one of the richest women in the world, when Visitor was a child, she and her mother would visit Duke's mansion in New Jersey, and Duke would play the piano and sing for them. On one particular visit, she sang Fever, and the way she sang the song had a huge impact on Visitor, who was 9 at the time. As Visitor explains it, she did Fever with this very breathy quality to her voice, and I remember thinking, oh, that's a real sophisticated woman.
Huh.
There was that personal connection for her, and so she's like, now I got to be like that woman. Which then led me to look up who Doris Duke was.
Sure.
And she's pretty interesting, like, billionaire, tobacco heiress, philanthropist, socialite, often called the richest little girl in the world. And so I had to go through her history, where it's like, her dad was James Buchanan Duke, tobacco and hydroelectric power tycoon, who died in 1925 and left his wife and daughter like 100, like what at the time was like $100 million or something. Sure. Apparently his wife was real good with business. It says that she was often compared to Hetty Green, such a shrewd businesswoman. So when she died in 1962, she left her daughter an estate worth $250 million, nice. Which by the time Duke died in 1994, the estate was $5.3 billion.
Wow.
So, yeah, she was real rich. But some interesting bits of her personal life are also in here, where it was like, during World War II, she worked in a bar in Egypt and like to serve drinks to soldiers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's an interesting thing for like super rich girl to do, but I guess, you know, you do you. And then she had a salary of $1 a year in that Egyptian cantina. Or canteen, sorry. And then after that, she became a foreign correspondent for the International News Service until she moved to Paris to write for Harper's Bazaar. This wow. Is like, yeah, she's reminding me of what's his name? George, what's that guy's name? They wrote the song about him.
George of the Jungle?
No, he was like there's a Jonathan Coulton song about George. A Talk with George is what it's called. And it's based on American journalist and author George Plimpton, who went around doing all sorts of... and anyway, you can read about him sometime if you want. He had a very interesting life where it was like one of the lines in the song is like, when they shoot poor Bobby down, you tackle Sirhan to the ground, because he was that guy was there for that and was one of the guys who tackled Sirhan.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, so yeah, this lady had a super interesting life. People, you should go and read about her because she sounded like a lot of fun. And then it was like, when I got to her death, it was like in 1992, at the age of 79, she had a facelift and tried to walk while still heavily medicated and fell down and broke her hip, which led to like multiple surgeries where she eventually, like, through the course of all these surgeries over a couple of years, got worse and worse and died.
Oh,
I was like, oh, that's kind of a sad way to go out in the end. But also she left most of her billions of dollars to various charities. So like she'd done philanthropic work with AIDS research and child welfare. She had like donating for funding black students in the American South who were disadvantaged because of racism so that they could get an education.
Nice.
And so, yeah. Nice way to end too. So apparently Nana Visitor's mom was good friends with her, and that is where we got this song from.
So she inspired the performance of Fever also. Very important in that life. So after this Fever performance, they all go back to Vic's, where Vic does a cool 3-layer champagne pour and makes a toast to whatever makes you happy. Then he goes into the other room to give Odo and Lola some privacy. They get along well, but something's not right. Odo calls Vic back in and says it's too obvious that Lola has been programmed to like him. And that's his only objection to what's going on. He finds nothing else problematic about this.
No, everything else is fine.
It's just the verisimilitude isn't there.
Well, it's like, she needs to be a little hard to get.
While hologram Kira watches, confused, Vic talks about how hard it was to find a hologram model of Kira that didn't have a quark head.
Also, that didn't have a Russian accent.
Right. In the end, it turned out to be easier to fix the accent than the quark head, I guess.
Who would have thought?
Odo says it's no use, the holosuite is one thing, but as soon as he's with the real Kira, he's just going to turn back into Nanook of the North. Then he leaves so that Vic can explain to Lola the horrifying truth of her existence.
Look, she's like, you're one of these holograms too? And then Vic sleeps with her because,
Sure, why not?
Somebody needed to.
He's just what an existential nightmare Vic's life must be. But
he's fine with it.
Or he's programmed so that he can't express how not fine with it he is.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, like as he lays down in bed at night, he's like trapped in his own brain and the horror.
He has no mouth, yet he must scream. Later, Odo is walking out of his office and runs into the real Kira on the promenade. She asks if anything exciting happened when she was gone, and he says no, and then he turns around 180 degrees and just goes right back into his office. So nothing suspicious at all.
Didn't do anything weird while you were gone, didn't go out on a date with Hologram You or anything crazy like that. Perfectly normal day. Several days.
Yep. Then Kira goes and does some meditating in the classic Cave with Candles holosuite program.
Everyone's favorite.
But she's interrupted by none other than Vic Fontaine. He says he was performing for Worf and Dax in the next holosuite over, but he's between sets, so he transferred his matrix into this holosuite. And it's like, wait, you can do that? What kind of being are you?
I like that. First of all, we have to get the explanation. We can't yada yada how Vic got here. And then as we wrap up this conversation at the end, Kira's like, how did you get here again? Like, hold on. Let's go back to that because this is concerning.
Right. Yeah. Vic, but
is someone going to be in like Vulcan Love Slave 5 and Vic's going to just pop over to see what's going on?
So what's going on in this program? But yeah, he's like, don't worry about that. Odo wants to ask you out. Kira is reluctant at first, but she eventually yields to Vic's simulated charm. Then Vic calls Odo on the comm system. And it's like, oh my god, what kind of horrible malfunction has happened that allows you to take over systems outside the holosuite?
No, this isn't suspicious at all. This isn't ship in a bottle in any way. Everything is fine. Everyone is fine with it.
At what point did we become ship in a bottle? We have to retrace our steps. Yeah, Vic is like, yeah, don't worry about that. Come to the holosuite tonight. I made some improvements to the Kira hologram. She is now fully convincing as the real Kira, and you can interact with her and do whatever you want without breaking the illusion. And Odo's like, good. This is a perfectly fine and okay thing I'm doing.
I mean, he's slightly hesitant about it, but not much.
So Odo and Kira meet for a romantic date in Vic's club. Odo thinking that Kira is a hologram. And then Vic plays waiter. And desperately tries to get them to ingest his mind control nanites or whatever that he's replicated.
I mean, does the program not have waiters?
Well, it's more special to be waited on by Vic Fontaine himself. And also you'd have to pay another person to be the waiter.
Yeah, it's true.
But he announces the menu of Dom 55, Oysters Rockefeller, Caesar salad, Chateaubriand, and Cherries Jubilee. So again, is this real food?
No.
Can they eat it?
I guess he could have gotten Quark. He could have called Quark on the comms and then ordered some food to be brought into the holosuite, and then Quark would have. And he tells Quark to charge it to like Worf's account because Vic can hack the various bank accounts also. So.
Right. It's like, hold on, let me access the Bank of Boleus real fast.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that hard, apparently.
Yeah, so I just think that the holosuites must be also giant replicators. That's the only thing that makes sense. Otherwise, you just have to pretend to eat like the Chateaubriand and the Dom 55 and stuff. So yeah, Odo says bon appetit, having learned a little bit of the language of love from Vic.
Does not get translated by any universal translators they might have.
Yeah, as usual, somehow they're able to bypass the universal translators to say certain phrases.
Yep.
The two talk romantically. Odo is impressed with Vic's programming skills, that the Kira program knows he told her the only thing he loves is his work. But he says he does love his work, but he worries that it's distracted him from other important aspects of his life. And Kira says she knows the feeling. Then some romantic music starts playing. Vic starts singing, "I've got you under my skin." Kira's not hungry, so Odo invites her to a dance. Kira mentions that she knows a couple of out-of-the-way restaurants on the station they could go out to sometime, but Odo says, it's too bad she can't leave the holosuite. Because you're a hologram.
It is interesting that Kira is immediately, like, they're just barely into this date, and she's like, hey, let's have more dates. Like, she's on it. She's up for it.
Can we maybe do some activities other than eating, though? Because I don't do that. But Vic reveals that she is the real Kira. Kira and Odo are both mildly annoyed, but otherwise not vexed by how deftly this computer program was able to manipulate them into the situation.
Kira not at all offended that Odo wanted to go on a date with a fake version of her.
Yeah, she's not thinking any of this through at all, like the implications of what's going on. Odo doesn't know what to do, so he just leaves, and then Vic ends his own program. Which, again, what? Later, Vic calls Odo in his office and tries to put a good face on the situation, but Odo isn't having it. And also, how are you able to call me?
Did he turn himself on to make the call, or
yeah? Because we keep seeing
from within the computer.
We keep seeing his rod go back into that box, right? And that's not a dirty euphemism. The thing that contains his entire existence keeps getting packed away in a little box. So I don't know. What was he able to like copy himself into the main computer or something?
We're gonna have it's all gonna be VIX all the way down soon. It's like a Grey Goo sort of digital thing.
So meanwhile, Kira and Dax are walking down the promenade, and Kira starts talking about how she's had a moment of total clarity, which Dax herself has only experienced once or twice in her 7 lifetimes, and she advises Kira to act on it because it's a rare and special thing.
Well, okay. So what Kira says is like, do you ever have like this moment where something becomes really clear to you all of a sudden? And Dax is like, I mean, total clarity, that almost never happens. And I'm like, well, she didn't say that like everything in her life suddenly became clear. She said this one thing suddenly became really clear. I'm not sure that is total clarity. I feel like you may be talking at cross purposes here, but whatever. I mean, it ends up where they want to go.
Yeah, Dax is really impressed because she's thinking back to the time like, she climbed a mountain in, some mystical land and met with the guru who elevated her consciousness just briefly to like, the next level of awareness. And she's like, wow, you had that?
And Kira's just like, oh no, I fell in love. And Dax is like, oh, I do that every week.
Right. Then Kira spots Odo coming out of his office and has yet another moment of clarity. So she goes and talks to Odo and says they should talk about things over dinner. Odo can pick the restaurant based, I guess, on what he wants to watch Kira eat. Odo says, I thought you were with Shakar. And Kira says, no, we're just friends. He wanted me to brief him on the Dominion War, that's all. The 2 extra days I spent down there with him were just for some totally emotionless stress relief banging. Like,
yeah.
No romance. And as a couple of weird aliens stare at them in the background...
This does note that one of the aliens watching on the promenade is a Venturi from the computer game Star Trek Starfleet Academy. And so when I went and looked that up, apparently in this game, they're like a species that was part of the Federation, but their son began dying, so they turned to piracy. And it's like, oh man, that could be fun to talk about on Deep Space Nine. When are we going to learn more about? Oh, we're not.
Right. No, they just, they see something juicy happening and they're like, ooh, let's just stop and watch this. So, yeah, they do the, whole shtick where it's like, well, what do you want to do after dinner? So maybe we'll go dancing. It's like, well, then I guess you'll want me to kiss you. And it's like, yeah, probably. And then it's like, well, why don't we just skip all the rest and kiss right now? And Kira's like, yeah, maybe we should. So Odo just grabs Kira and kisses her. And then the entire promenade stops to watch, and then the entire clientele of Quarks comes out of Quarks to also watch. So
you don't get to see people making out on the promenade that often.
I know. This is just a really special thing that never happens. I don't know.
So apparently this kiss, not fun for either of the actors involved. Renee Auberjonois explains, we started the scene, we got to the mark, boom, we kissed each other. When they yelled cut, we stopped. I looked at Nana, and her face was sort of orange and weird. And Dean Jones, my makeup artist, looked at me, and he went, oh, God. We had been so anxious about it, we sort of just went, kuh, and kissed, and my makeup got all over her face, and I tore my mask. Now when people ask me, what was it like to kiss Nana? I say, the definition of safe sex is this latex mask. It is the most unsensual kiss I've ever had. I didn't feel anything.
Aw. So to wrap things up, later Odo shows up at Vic's to thank him for his help. Before Odo leaves, Vic says, hey, can you leave the holosuite running for a few minutes? Every time my program turns off, I'm filled with mortal terror at the thought that it won't turn back on again. I mean, I feel like singing. And then Odo smiles. He's like, oh, Vic. And then he walks out. And then Vic sings a reprise of Come Fly With Me. And then makes his sinister plans or whatever. The end.
So there's a lot of notes in here about the reception of the episode from various quarters, but I'll start with the fact that this is the only episode of Star Trek nominated for the Emmy for Outstanding Musical Direction.
Huh.
So there you go.
Wow. Good job, I guess.
This episode has some varying reactions among the fans and the cast and the crew. So we'll start with the cast.
Okay.
Nana Visitor and Renee Auberjonois both unhappy with the idea of their characters becoming romantically involved. Visitor says, I'm not a fan of the Odo-Kira being together thing, but they found a way to make it all make sense. I've always felt I have to open my mouth and pick my fights, and even though I know there's a certain amount of fights I'm going to lose, I always do it anyway. This was one that I lost.
Oh.
So, yeah, she doesn't like that. Renee Auberjonois, on the other hand, says, when I got the script for His Way, I resisted it first when I read it. I thought, oh, this is silly. I thought that because I was so into the painful aspects of Odo, the tortured hidden love aspect of this relationship with Major Kira, I could feel myself sort of going into a place of my character wouldn't do that. And then I did what I always did. I took a deep breath. I sat down. I read the script again. And by the time I read it for the second time, I was convinced that it was the right way to go. And I really look forward to doing it. It turned out to be one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had so far. So I think overall, maybe he wasn't a huge fan of the way that story went either, but he's like, you know what? He's going to be less confrontational about it than Nana Visitor.
If you got to do it, might as well roll with it.
Fans, on the other hand, some of them like it, like the Cinefantastique, which I mentioned recently, rated In the Pale Moonlight. I think it was like their 4th best episode of Deep Space Nine. They called this, I think In the Pale Moonlight was their
In the Pale Moonlight, right.
They called this their 9th best episode
still
of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So yeah, I mean, it's in the top 10. On the other hand, Ira Stephen Bear says that the quality of the show, okay, the note starts that it's not well received by some fans. Something which bitterly disappointed Bear, who says the quality of this show is not apparent to everyone, and that's really, really sad. Because that show is as perfect an episode as we ever did. You would be hard-pressed to find moments that don't work. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. As loony as the show might seem, it's a real triumph. I'm not saying it's the only triumph by any means, but it's the one that's most masked, I guess, that's the toughest for the audience to recognize. So I love, this is so classic Ira Stephen Bear, where he's like, the audience doesn't like it, but that's because they don't get it.
Right. Yeah. It's the children who are wrong.
They can't recognize the how amazing this episode is.
Mm.
He says it's one of his favorites that he's exceptionally proud of. To do a nice romantic comedy without a lot of cliches, to be clever and not overdo it, and have an emotion rather than sentimentality, empathy rather than sentimentality, is incredibly difficult, especially in a series like Star Trek that isn't geared towards that kind of stuff. So I guess he's saying, no cliches to be seen here, no sentimentality. This was gold from top to bottom.
If you say so, Ira Stephen Bear.
He says that this is one of those things that he doesn't think a lot of fans realize, that it's episode like this, or Far Beyond the Stars, or The Visitor, that are really the toughest to do. Light, successful, humor, romance, it's all incredibly hard on every level, not just in the writing, but in production-wise as well. To suddenly bring this Vegas holosuite and Vic Fontaine, there's just some fans who don't tune in for that, and are never going to get it, weren't prepared for it, haven't had their little minds, their brain muscles massaged and worked out so that they would be able to go for it. But there are others who can.
Okay, so if you don't like it, you're stupid.
Yeah, you're a small-minded fan if you just can't get behind this episode.
Okay, got it.
The director, Alan Croker, says it's one of his personal favorites. He said, I had a marvelous time on that episode. It should probably be illegal to have that much fun. And Ronald D. Moore also pleased with the episode. I got a kick out of that episode. The whole crew did. The crew and cast really loved James Darren. It's such a different place. When they put up that Vegas lounge and Jimmy is up there singing, everyone's in a really good mood. It changes the whole ambiance. I think that's just a really good episode. It's fun. I'm glad to use all of the music. It sets a different note. I think it's the most romantic show that we've done. A lot of times romances on Star Trek have just been unsatisfying. I haven't liked a lot of the romances I've worked on and been involved with on TNG or DS9. That was one where I did feel it. When Odo and Kira are out at dinner and Jimmy appears and starts singing I've Got You Under My Skin, to me, that's a movie moment. That's magic. They get up and dance. It's a great song. The setting's perfect. The mood is right. Two characters moving towards this moment for years. It's just a great show. So, most of the crew seems to be a big fan of this episode. It's the cast and maybe some of the fans out there who do not agree. But that's all the episode, or that's all the notes, except for the one note about the title, which I'll save for when we get there.
There's a note about the title?
Yeah, about where the title came from.
All right, review time?
Yeah, what did you think of His Way?
All right, well, my first note I have wrote down is it is annoyingly well executed for what it is.
Wow, okay. Interesting start.
That basically sums up my thoughts on it. I've never really been into the whole Kira Odo romance, and going through these episodes, they've just taken that in so many weird directions.
Genocide.
Yeah. I think the right thing to do is to just drop it at this point. But like I said earlier, it just seems like this is the only way they could think of to even make it sort of plausible, and it's just sort of a kind of an absurd concept of having this lounge singer hook them up. This, like, is he a conscious being with a mind of his own, or is he just like a set of algorithms that like inputs and outputs that hook them up together? I don't know. You could argue there's no difference, but
it's the metaphysical aspect of Vic that is just horrifying you the most, isn't it?
It's that aspect of it is almost fascinating to me. I wish they would explore it. Like, I wish this episode had been about them thinking that Vic is this charming guy all along, and then really he's got all this like stuff going on under the surface, and he's shipping and bottling everybody all over the place, and doing all kinds of stuff. But that's not the direction they took the episode. Yeah, I gotta say, I think that Renee Auberjonois and Nana Visitor did really good acting jobs in this episode. Like, it was really well directed. I mean, what's his name? Not Bobby Darin.
James Darin.
James Darin was good in that role. So,
are they related?
It's just, and I just generally don't like the they did this on TNG sometimes. It's like they would bring up a holoprogram of Einstein to ask him for advice and stuff like that. Or one time, Data went to a comedy club and had a comedian teach him about comedy and stuff. It kind of harkens back to that, and I never like those episodes. But I think just at its core, I just think there's something wrong about it. And I'm speaking not even about the Vic part, but just the Kira and Odo part. So it's a really tough review for me, whether I want to put it above or below the line. But I could change my mind tomorrow, but I think for now I have to keep it under the line and give it a lieutenant.
Wow. Okay.
So, what do you think?
Okay, first I have to take a slight, because you mentioned Bobby Darin, and I was like, hey, are these two related? Their names are spelled differently. So no, but also when I Googled this, it turns out these two knew each other, and in one of the obituary type things for James Darin, there's a sentence that says his first Gidget was Sandra Dee, who ironically married singer Bobby Darin.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, what, his first Gidget? So then I had to look. James Darin was in the movie Gidget, which featured Yvonne Craig. And that's mentioned because this is in Memory Alpha, and Yvonne Craig was in the original series as an Orion painted green woman. Although some of us remember her best for being Batgirl in the Adam West Batman show. Anyway, Darin would go on to reprise his role for Gidget Goes Hawaiian, and also Gidget Goes to Rome. So apparently he was in some Gidget movies, and I guess one of those Gidgets married Bobby Darin. So
even though Gidget is the title character, Gidget was played by different people?
That is what it makes it sound like, yes. Okay,
but
and now we're going to look for that real quick.
But James Darin was always the same. Okay.
So, yeah, Gidget was played in Gidget by Sandra Dee as Francine Gidget Lawrence, but in Gidget Goes Hawaiian, on the cast list for Gidget Goes Hawaiian in Wikipedia, James Darin comes before Gidget, but Deborah Wally plays Gidget in Gidget Goes Hawaiian. Hold on, but what about the next Gidget one? Does the original come back or something? Gidget Goes to Rome. Oh no, I have to know. It's a completely different Gidget again. Cindy Carroll as Gidget. Whereas in all three of these movies, James Darin is Jeffrey Moondoggy Matthews. So there you go. That was my most random. We didn't have a nitpick of the week. That was my super random digression of the week.
All right.
The episode.
Right. What do you think of the episode? His way.
Look, I have never cared about the Kira and Odo romance. Not really at all, honestly. And I think that Renee and Nana, as well as I think that they are right, that these characters should have stayed friends. We don't need everybody to be in a romance with everybody else on the show. That's not necessary. It would be nice to have. I mean, we have Cisco Dax. They have this platonic friendship, but that's because it would be weird if it went beyond that, even though he does it with Mirror Dax. But it's beside the point. These two had a nice friendship relationship, and the show even reached a decent point to where they were like, oh, and it's never going to happen between Odo and Kira. Odo has accepted this and is going to move on. And then we get to that episode where they're like, oh, we can use alternate future Odo to reveal his feelings and start pursuing this again. And after he kills an entire planet because of his love for Kira, it was kind of inevitable that we had to get to this point where you thought that this was going to be addressed in that episode where they spent the night in Dax's closet talking, but apparently, like, nothing came of that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it had to reach ahead at some point.
Mm.
And given how TV goes, they weren't going to build to it for this long and then have them go, never mind. So it's something that I feel like we knew was coming, even if we hadn't seen the show yet. At some point, this was going to happen. I just don't care. That said, Vic Fontaine, probably among the fans, one of the most divisive characters on Deep Space Nine.
I believe it.
Certainly not the most divisive. We will get to that next season. But one of the most divisive characters among the fans, because, I mean, Ira Stephen Bear said it. Some people are just like, what the hell is this? Why are we going to, like, 1950s Vegas and having this guy? Why is he the center of an episode? Like, what? And we're not going to go Moriarty? Like, we're not going to make it like sci-fi? Because we really don't. We don't make it sci-fi, except for tricking Odo into thinking that that's not the real Kira, right? So it's weird. And some fans love it, some fans hate it. And the character, because he's the central representation of this, right?
Right.
Personally, I love Vic. I'm also a fan of like Frank Sinatra music, that kind of thing.
Sure.
And so having this guy on Deep Space Nine, I have his versions. Like, he put out a CD of like Vic Fontaine songs from Deep Space Nine or whatever. I have several of those tracks, like, on my phone, on playlists. I like him. I like what he's bringing to the show, as weird, as out there as it is. I feel like that's one of the things about Deep Space Nine that stands out, that we do this completely weird thing. And spoiler, it comes back. This is not a one-time thing. He becomes a semi-regular and actually has some important things that he does, not just getting Kira and Odo together, but like important effects on the overall story. He is like, in the lives of several of our main characters, he is a pivotal figure, which is bizarre. But I love it. Like, I really like him. I like that they Deep Space Nine did this really weird thing, and that they went with it. Fans are like, really? You're gonna, and Irish Steven Bear's like, nah, you don't get it. You're not seeing my vision. Vic's coming back. Not only is Vic coming back, he's coming back a bunch. So, for a character who shows up almost at the end of the second to last season, he comes back a fair number of times, continuing to spoil things, even though we said we wouldn't. Anyway. And I like it. So I like almost everything about this episode, except for the fact that it's about Kira, because really that is all that it's about, is Kira and Odo getting together.
Yeah.
Right? Is there a B story happening here? Not really. Unless you want to consider Dax gossiping to be its own B story. This is yet another episode where we really don't have a B story. It's all Odo Kira, Odo Dax. That would have been interesting. It's all Odo and Kira working towards, mostly Odo. Kira's gone for a lot of it, but working towards that moment that the series has been hinting at and pointing to for a while. And even though I don't care about that moment, I don't care about them getting together as a couple, or if they don't get together as a couple. I love all of the stuff, him, like Odo trying to figure out how to be someone else who the person he's interested in would be interested in, and going to this crazy off the wall hologram for advice on this, because there's no one else he can talk to. He can talk to Quark, but Quark doesn't want to talk about it. And Quark isn't the person you're going to go to for advice on women anyway. So, like, he finds that Vic is insightful, and there's no one else that he can talk to, and that can help him. So it's just this crazy fun thing that introduces this character that I like, and this crazy off the wall situation that I like. So for me, it rates pretty highly for the introduction of Vic. and for the way that that we play this episode. And you said it yourself, the acting in pretty much all quarters is top-notch in this episode as well, which doesn't hurt anything for sure. And I like the music, personally, so that's if we're going to have a musical episode of Deep Space Nine, I'm into it being this kind of music, so I'm good with that. This is probably a Commander for me.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like I think I'd like the episode a lot more if maybe they tried it. You know, they made an honest run at it, and then they kind of came to the realization like this just isn't like, you know, what our relationship is or whatever.
Sure.
Kind of like Odo had with Lwaxana, where she was like, "Look, you're not in love with me. Like, you know, that this is never going to be a real thing. We just need to be real about it and stuff like that." So. And then you could play it like, man, if even Vic can't get them together, it must not really work. It's like, I like the character of Vic, but just, what is he? It's very distracting. Why can't they just have him be like a 24th century lounge singer who, like, you know, goes around the deep space club circuit and he sings at Quark sometimes or something?
I feel like they're kind of thumbing their noses at the audience and at like the next generation writers, where they're like, yeah, this is Moriarty. He can do all the stuff Moriarty does, but all he wants to do is sing and give advice. Like they're like messing with you intentionally,
right,
to make you be like, oh God, this is actually a horrifying character. And they're like, no, he just wants to sing for you. Right. It's all good.
I think part of the problem is that we had Moriarty and we dove really deep into this philosophical stuff. And then just here's this guy, and it's like, oh, I guess he's just okay with this existence, or he's just a hologram, and he doesn't, like, he has no internal experience or whatever. Like, either way, it's a little horrifying to me. But
no one ever thought, why don't we just reprogram Moriarty so he's okay with it? Maybe
right.
They should have tried that.
Yeah, how come Geordi didn't go like, computer? Make Moriarty okay with his existence.
Yeah.
Because apparently, you know, you can just tell the computer to do anything and it'll do it. So
you can tell it to create life, and it's like, all right, basically. No problem.
You could probably tell the computer to like replicate you a new like human being, and it would do it. But yeah, so I'm just endlessly baffled by this aspect of it's like just every time he like has a nugget of wisdom, or he like, you know, smiles charmingly or something, I'm like, is this real? Like, is there cold calculations going on underneath the surface? Or
see, you're like disturbed and fascinated by the ramifications here. I'm just along for the ride.
Right.
I'm just like, oh yes, okay, this is great, this is insane, and I love it.
Right. If they would just say like, he's basically like the Doctor, but you know, he's a lounge singer. If they would just clarify that, I would be good. And you know, just be like, yeah, he likes being a singer. He totally loves his life. You know, when he's not active, he gets to live out all the Vegas like nightlife adventures he wants. But the fact that they go to so much trouble to show him like being put in and taken out of that box, so I feel like I'm being kind of like trolled a little bit.
Yeah, see, they're messing with you.
Yeah,
our Stephen Bear is out there just like wheels within wheels. How can I mess with these people?
Right. But yeah, like you said, I mean, my main complaint isn't even that. It's just everything about the Odo and Kira thing just feels not right and uncomfortable. So, and the fact that the whole premise is that Odo is like practicing on like a fake Kira. It's
a little creepy.
Yeah. Like I feel like we've had these exact stories before. This is like a Barclay story, or like Geordi LaForge and Leah Brahms.
Yeah. And see, and that's the thing is, it's like one of those things, right? Except on here, because only Odo, I mean, Kira finds out at the end, but only Odo knows about it.
Uh-huh.
and he's the one doing it. Odo has always, and we've pointed out a lot, he has always looked at things and society and right and wrong differently from some other people.
Sure.
And he has a more authoritative bent. And I don't know that applies here necessarily, but it's just like he sees things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I guess, one of those things. And maybe it's just him being selfish and being like, well, this is what I want.
Uh-huh.
And you could explore that. You could be like, oh, no, this is kind of messed up. And he's like, well, why? Like, I'm getting what I want. Nobody's getting hurt. How's it messed up?
Right.
So, yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where Odo, from his changeling perspective, sees this moral quandary differently from how other people are going to see it. And it's weird that we don't even touch on that.
Right. Like, Kira never brings this up. She's not put off by it, apparently.
Like, the last time somebody tried to get a hologram of Kira, she just about lost her mind. So, like, the fact that she has no objection at all is weird.
Yeah, it's hard for me to when you dive down into it, kind of figure out the moral difference between Odo and Pervalian.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess just like you said, you got to be along for the ride, or it's you just can't worry about these things or something. I don't know. And my brain is maybe too small.
Oh, that's really what it is. Yeah, you're just one of those small minds. I'm sorry.
Anyway, what about the title, His Way?
So the note is that this is obviously a reference to the Frank Sinatra hit song "My Way."
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, you didn't know that, did you?
I mean, whose way is it? Is it Odo's way?
It kind of is Odo's way. Like, he gets everything he wants and faces no consequences for the weird things that he does.
Huh. I also find it odd that they had to switch my way to his way. Like, what were they trying to say by doing that?
That they didn't want to get sued? I don't know.
So yeah, you can't have my way. Sorry. Like, relevance, I guess, yes. Cleverness, I guess.
I think you've already made the point that it's like, what does the change mean?
Right.
Maybe if I understood, for all I know, it's actually very clever that they changed it to his way and it has like this deeper meaning and it's very clever. I don't get it.
Right.
Yet. So I'm small mind. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe there's a whole depth to it that we're not. And it's like, I haven't listened to them in a while, but like the Delta Flyers Deep Space Nine reviews that have like Armin Sherman. Armin Sherman always comes up with these like deep interpretations of the title that have like, like several layers, and you're like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't think about it like that. Like he always looks up like the title in like he has like a full Oxford English dictionary. Wow. Like the full like multi-volume one that has like all the in-depth like word histories and stuff. And he like looks up the titles in there and comes up with stuff out of there. So
putting way more thought into it than the authors or the writers did. I am 100% certain.
Oh, probably, and that we do. So,
well, yeah, fair.
I don't think we're going to start looking up stuff in the Oxford English Dictionary anytime soon. So, I don't know. It feels a little bit lazy to me as a title, and I'm sure it made sense to someone at some point why we're switching my way to his way, but surely you could think of a Sinatra song that fits the situation better. Like, well, I mean, we might have some coming up, but
I mean, it's a little bit Paper Moon, honestly, but I mean, that's anyway. Yeah, I think looked at from the perspective of being a takeoff on a Frank Sinatra song title, I think that makes it at least fairly memorable. That that's a Vic Fontaine thing,
sure,
because what else would the Frank Sinatra thing be about? So at least in that aspect, and maybe like I said, maybe it's fitting, maybe it's clever. If it is, I don't necessarily see it, but
yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's just like you hear something with Prophet in it, you're going to get a Ferengi episode. You hear like a Sinatra reference, you're going to get a Vic Fontaine episode.
Yeah,
you hear like a crazy like lofty Bible quote, you're going to get some like deep dark Dominion War stuff, or so
yeah.
I guess it helps to kind of brand your episodes like that. I don't know.
Maybe.
But I'm tired of talking about it. So, any final thoughts?
No.
Nothing. Okay. So, yep, that's our review of His Way. Thanks for listening. If you like that one, maybe you'll like our discussion of Ship in a Bottle. If you can find that, because it's definitely not guaranteed to be on whatever platform you're listening on, but it is on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, if you can find it. If you want to listen to other Deep Space Nine reviews, you can find that wherever you're listening to this. If you want to leave us a comment, though, and we'll read it, you can do that on YouTube. My name is Fletcher. About to say goodbye is Data.
Adios.
We look forward to seeing you next week. But remember, to whatever makes you happy.